This is one of the 3 people we have running for us in the United States Senate special election. Like I said, one of 3 though. We also have Mr. Ed Tarver. I saw him online earlier with us. Mr. Tarver, are you ready to tell the people, you came and visited us with us before one of our general meetings. We thank you for that. And thank you for coming back again tonight. Can you tell the people of Coweta County what's going on, why you're running, how you're running, and how you're going to win this race?
Certainly. Thank you for having me again. Good evening, Coweta County Democrats. I'm delighted to be here with you again. It was my honor. It's my honor to participate in the Atkinson-Arnall Candidate Forum. As you know, I've already taken advantage of the opportunity to meet with you virtually to share information about my background and my experience in government. My campaign for the U.S. Senate is based upon my commitment to public service, my vast experience, and I invite you to visit my website at www.tarverforsenate.com for any additional information that you may have missed or maybe I didn't cover during my initial visit with you. But it certainly will provide you with some information about my record of community and public service to our state and to our nation. We all know about the challenges that Georgia families have endured during 2020. Our state and our nation have been challenged by a global pandemic that has caused over 200,000 deaths in the U.S. We've been plagued by the greatest economic downturn in decades. Thousands of small businesses have closed, many never to reopen again. We have experienced massive unemployment, the loss of individual health care by millions across the country. And as Reverend Warnock indicated earlier, many rural hospitals in our state have closed. And that doesn't include recent additional challenges that we have encountered, the widespread national protests in response to unjustified deaths at the hands of police. We recently are dealing with and currently dealing with the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the likely reshaping of the Supreme Court for the years to come because of the Republicans' push to fill that seat and to call for a vote before the November general election. We've also been stunned by the current president, by Donald Trump's refusal to commit to a peaceful transition of power after the election. And we've also experienced here just recently a new wave of national protests after the indictments or the lack of indictments in the Breonna Taylor incident in Kentucky occurred. I continue to be a candidate in this special election because I want to help turn Georgia blue. This week's presidential debate provided clear evidence that we are in a battle for our democracy. I truly believe that this is the most consequential election of my lifetime. And maybe you may agree with me that it applies to you as well. It will not be enough for a Democrat to merely make it into a runoff. We must elect a Democrat that is prepared and has the experience to provide bold leadership in the U.S. Senate starting on day one. A Democrat must win this election and turn the U.S. Senate blue. I believe that my record of proven leadership makes me uniquely qualified to represent Georgia in the U.S. Senate at this pivotal moment in our history. I'm ready to take the fight to Washington. I would be honored to earn your vote. And if I am fortunate enough to earn your vote, I will not forget the important work that I started as one of Georgia's United States attorneys in the Southern District of Georgia. I will continue to support law enforcement to keep our community safe. And I will also ensure that available resources are available to law enforcement to protect Georgians from those who would do us harm. However, I will also fight to hold police accountable for excessive force and misconduct. I will seek legislation to reverse the devastating effects of mass incarceration that has resulted in our country, in the United States, incarcerating over 2.3 million of its own people, more than any other country on the planet. I will fight to end systemic racial and religious discrimination in law enforcement practices and procedures. I believe that these practices and procedures threaten the citizen trust and confidence in our criminal justice system, and that we must address that issue as quickly as possible. I will also lead the fight to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act. Too many times, violence against women is swept under the rug, or resolved by the frontline law enforcement officials who arrive at the home without a woman ever having an opportunity to be heard about the mistreatment and abuse that she has received. I will also fight to expand the national education standard from a K-12 standard to a K-16 standard that includes college. I will lead the charge to ensure that all Georgians have access to health care. And I will be a champion for reproductive rights. And I will combat Georgia's maternal mortality crisis that kills Black and rural women at rates 3 to 4 times higher than their counterparts in other states. Of course, I will also prioritize agriculture, our state's #1 resource, by supporting the Green New Deal. And most importantly, I will be a champion for Georgia families and the middle class. I won't need on-the-job training. I know what needs to be done. And I ask that you join us in this fight by doing a couple of things. I ask that you help by signing up at www.tarverforsenate.com to help our campaign, and by bringing 5 friends with you to the polls on October the 12th when early voting begins. We have a tough road ahead of us. As has been mentioned earlier, money plays a large part in these elections. And I am not one of the 2 candidates that has spent millions of dollars on their campaign. Mine is truly a grassroots effort. I've been crisscrossing the state in my Chevrolet Tahoe with myself, and many times just me and myself and my wife. But we are making great strides. Folks are responding to our grassroots message, and I believe that Georgians are encouraged by the fact that we are pushing to provide strong, proven leadership in the U.S. Senate to represent Georgia. So I thank you again for allowing me to be here with you this evening. I certainly would like to answer any questions that you may have at this time. Thank you.
Well, as promised, Ed, the first 2 questions are going to be remarkably similar to what Reverend Warnock faced and what Mr. Lieberman are going to face. The first one, can you give us an update? The quarter just closed. The reports obviously aren't due until October 15th. By that point, early voting will have started. Can you give us an update on what we can expect to see when your financial report is filed, and how you're going to use those resources to continue the fight both in November and into a possible runoff in January?
Our quarter just ended. We're still tabulating, but we expect to have raised over $125,000 this quarter, not the $12.8 million that my opponent has raised. But we raised that individually, going to at the grassroots level. We've received no PAC money, received no national money, received no support from the DSCC. We've received no support from any other union or any other organization that typically gets is in the business of supporting candidates. I'm not embarrassed by that or disappointed by any means. It just means that my campaign has had to focus on speaking to voters many times 1 or 2 or 5 at a time. And as I indicated earlier, it's certainly proving to be effective for our campaign. We are hitting, in addition to focusing our efforts in the Atlanta area where roughly 40% of the votes exist, we have embraced a One Georgia campaign. And we have been to just about every county in the state. We were recently up in Stevens County in Toccoa, been down to Effingham County near Savannah. We've been in Chatham County in Savannah. I spent the day recently in Albany. The response in all of those visits has been just tremendous. And folks are concerned about the fact that they recognize that for a position like the U.S. Senate, a position in the highest deliberative body in our government, that some preparation should have been undertaken to prepare a person to assume that role, and that experience does matter. So as I pointed out in my opening comments, that if the presidential debate this past week wasn't sufficient evidence for you to show that experience matters and what happens when a person assumes high office in this country without adequate preparation, we're seeing it live and firsthand right now.
Thank you for that update, Mr. Tarver. Second question, you mentioned a lot about your priorities, how you were going to work on police reform, ending mass incarceration, and you brought up the Violence Against Women Act, which the renewal of that I think is especially timely given the, quite frankly, likely confirmation of another justice who would be completely opposed to authorization of the Violence Against Women Act. We would be set with a Supreme Court with almost a majority that views women as property more than as people. So what measures would you support, and how do you plan to defend things like the reauthorization of a Violence Against Women Act from action by the Supreme Court to negate it?
Well, I think that this would be a case where it would help to have someone with a legal background. One of the things that we have heard about the nominee is her intellectual background, that she's a scholar. She has written a lot on a number of these subjects that she will face in the court. And I think the best strategy that we're going to have to use is to use the law. There's been a lot of talk about Democrats responding by packing the court. I'm opposed to that. As a former state legislator, I'm familiar with politicians, elected officials who move quickly with one intention in mind, and it has an unintended consequence. I think that before we take a drastic step like packing the court, that we ought to consider that carefully, because it could there are a number of unanticipated consequences that could happen that will have a long impact on this country. And I don't think that enough discussion, enough debate, or enough consideration has gone into that issue. I know that we're all concerned and frustrated about the situation that we find ourselves in, and about the speed in which the Trump administration, President Trump, has nominated someone to replace Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And we're also concerned about the speed in which Mitch McConnell was proceeding to call a vote. But I think that this is the time that cooler and calmer heads should prevail, that we should rely on the intellectuals in our party, the lawyers, those who are familiar with our constitutional process, and make sure that we develop a strategy that's going to have a long-term benefit for all Americans, and not just an immediate, a quick, immediate response that may satisfy our anger right now, but may have long-term consequences.
Thank you for that thoughtful answer and that honest answer. We've got about 3 minutes, just enough time for one more question. And it's something that's kind of dear to my heart. When I was out protesting with our local Black Lives Matter movement, one of the things we kept harping on is how local elections matter if we're going to do things like changing qualified immunity laws for police officers. Can you briefly give us your thoughts on either keeping or altering qualified immunity laws that affect our police forces?
Well, as you probably already know, qualified immunity is a judicially created doctrine. I believe that it certainly can be addressed very quickly legislatively, and probably the best place to address it would be in the U.S. Senate. I believe that we should move as quickly as possible to hold law enforcement accountable when misconduct, when excessive force has occurred. That's what we're hearing across the country. People are demanding that we do something to address those practices and procedures that are resulting over and over again in the death of individuals in the hands of law enforcement, and particularly African-American men who are dying at the hands of law enforcement. And the fact that what we saw here recently in Kentucky, where the Attorney General basically suggested that he was powerless to do anything to hold these individuals accountable for the death of an innocent citizen who was not the target of their investigation. It merely shows more that something needs to be done quickly and as soon as possible to address police accountability in our law enforcement practices.
Mr. Tarver, again, thank you so much for joining us, not just tonight, but also previously for one of our meetings. It's been great to have you. It's great to see men of character like you stepping up and running and trying to take that mantle of justice forward for us all. Good luck with your efforts. Thank you for continuing the fight, and thank you for stepping up to run for United States Senate.
Thank you for having me this evening. Enjoyed being with you folks again. Thank you.
As mentioned,